first, I was worried that to many observers, this conversation might feel like we were going back to square one, returning in some ways to the conversations that the land board has been having for years, if not decades. And my staff and I have been asked on a number of occasions in the last little while, didn't we do this already? I'm also aware, aside from that confusion, that there are a lot of parents and organizations who are representing education stakeholders who are anxious about the land board's ability to successfully decouple the Elliott from the Common School Fund. They're, I think, looking for momentum, a sense of progress from us, and I think it's fair to say that their patience is probably not infinite. There are obviously also a lot of people who are anxious about how the forest will be managed after decoupling and how the state will protect the conservation elements of the Elliott and ensure that the public will continue to be able to access the forest for recreation purposes. All of this is to underscore my strong feeling that I think is consistent with what you said, Governor, that we need to continue narrowing the options that are in front of us, particularly, in my view, to those options that meet our core assumptions of public ownership and access, full decoupling, strong conservation features, and of course meeting our obligation to the Common School Fund. In short, I think we need to keep moving forward. The second thing I was worried about was that we were somehow creating the impression that we're approaching the future of the Elliott as some sort of auction, as if we were simply asking who has $120 million, yes, with some conservation elements with which they could buy the Elliott. I'm worried that we're creating the impression that the only thing we're concerned about is the dollars. From my perspective, this is not an auction. Of course, we have to meet our obligation to the Common School Fund, but as much as it might feel like we're selling the Elliott, I think the reality is that what we're talking about is a whole lot bigger than that. I think we're talking about the future of the Elliott as a whole and how it fits into a much broader set of public interests. As we settle those questions, those fundamental, almost existential questions, then we can start to answer the practical questions that follow. What would it take to transform the Elliott from a common school asset into a different type of forest with a different mandate and a potentially different ownership structure? It seems to me that what we really need is a conversation that, like those that stem from a trust land transfer process. That's one of the reasons I'm really glad that the legislature and the governor were able to refine and enact the concept that I introduced as a legislator, because that puts that process into place, and I think it's going to be very helpful to us as we proceed. Now, I want to be clear about something else. I'm really excited about the vision that Dean Davis and OSU articulated today. It seems clear to me that that vision is entirely consistent with what the land board has already articulated as a direction. OSU seems to me sees value in a contiguous 80,000 plus acre research forest that provides for public access and recreation. They see a strong conservation component on that landscape, and in what I think distinguishes it from a lot of positive aspects of the other things we've heard, they see a strong research component that will inform the future not only of timber management, but of climate change adaptation and response, significant potential for tribal partnerships, and of course support for rural communities. Madam Chair, Mr. Secretary, I think this is a really big opportunity for us as a state to answer some really big questions that will define who we are in the decades to come, and I'm ready to endorse that vision of a research forest on the Elliott. From where I sit, I see that potential in the research, and I'd like the staff at DSL to begin working with OSU to sketch out a work plan that would inform the questions that need to be answered. It seems to me that embracing the vision of a research forest with OSU leading that conversation would also allow DSL to move forward with its HCP contractor and federal agencies, and we've already heard very articulately how important that's going to be to the Elliott's future. I would ask, Madam Chair, that the work plan include a process for stakeholder engagement. We've talked about that already, including involvement of local and tribal governments. I think it needs to begin answering questions about those governance structures, how to engage the legislature and other potential funders on how a financing package might come together, maybe using the tribal, the trust land transfer process that's recently been enacted. And I think it should include support for OSU as it works to help DSL put together the habitat conservation plan and build public support for research forest. I know there's a lot of work still ahead of us when it comes to the Elliott, but I'm really excited about this direction, this momentum. I'm hoping that a year from now we're going to be sitting here looking at a fully developed plan that'll position us with the Elliott Research Forest as a national and global leader, as the President said well. So I have a motion. I'm happy to pause or make that motion as your preference.
Why don't you hang on with your motion?
Okay.